as being dour and puritanical, and that could be true for some, but this is also the age of Benjamin Franklin, where he's essentially producing entire books of witticisms. And many of the Founding Fathers specifically did not want Franklin to write the Declaration of Independence and gave it to Jefferson because they didn't want Franklin to sneak in a joke in the Declaration, which he very well could have. But in the early 19th century, there was a sentiment held that laughing or smiling too much could be considered foolish and unintelligent. Even prominent humorists of the time, like Ralph Waldo Emerson, agreed with the sentiment. When he was traveling through England in May of 1848, Emerson wrote to a friend regarding one of his newfound English acquaintances. He writes, "The one thing odious to me is joking. The day's Englishman must have his joke, as duly as his bread. God grant me the noble companions whom I have left at home, who value merriment less and virtues and powers more." Well, whether or not this attitude was representative of others in the United States, in terms of buying decisions, this perspective clearly began to change by the later 19th century with the 1871 debut of the first successful humor magazine in the United States, Puck, which was inspired by the British humor magazine Punch. This was the magazine I was talking about at the top of this episode, where there are cartoons, and you can find a lot of them if you go to AuthenticHistory.com. Some of them seem didactic, they seem more like propaganda, and the humor can be a little bit baffling, but it is at least identifiably humor to those who would have consumed it at the time. And after the appearance and success of Puck, humor magazines began popping up everywhere, and sort of the laboratory of humor production is universities, where student publications are dedicated to humor, and they're some of the most successful. Yale released a student humor publication called the Yale Record. Harvard followed with the Harvard Lampoon in 1876, from which National Lampoon comes from, and Stanford joined with the Stanford Chapara in 1899. And this is where you get a lot of cornball puns. One from the Harvard Lampoon goes like this. A barber asks a client, "Would you like to have a haircut, sir?" And the man says, "Thank you. I've thought of having several of them cut." And if you can hear the rim shot in your head, there it is. So as we can see here, there's simple puns and simple wordplay. And some of the humor is lost on us from ancient societies, but some of it makes as much sense as ever. So I'll close out with one more joke from the Philogelos, and it has to do with an incompetent astrologer. An incompetent astrologer cast a man's horoscope and said, "You are unable to father children." The man objected and said he had 7 kids. To this, the astrologer replied, "Well, that means you should look after them better." Hey everyone, Scott here. One more brief word from our sponsors. All right, well, that is the show for today. Thank you so much for listening. First of all, I'd like to thank the Knowlton's Rangers, and especially our spy masters, Baron Fraser, Carl from Norway, Chris from Maine, Moon Doggy from Ohio, and Rick Knowlton, and I'll explain what that means in a second. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review on the podcast listener of your choice, whether it's iTunes, whether it's Stitcher, Google Podcasts, whatever. Also, we have a Facebook page. You can join us there to keep up the discussion on latest episodes. And finally, if you really want to dig in deeper with this show, I encourage you to join the Knowlton's Rangers. The Knowlton's Rangers were an elite reconnaissance and espionage detachment of the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War, but it's also the name of the History Unplugged membership program. Learn how to join by going to patreon.com/unplugged. So here's what you get if you become one of the Knowlton's Rangers. If you join at the level of Scout, you can get early access to new podcast episodes, along with enjoying absolutely every single episode of the History Unplugged podcast ad-free. All 270 and counting episodes. If you join at the level of Intelligence Officer, you can also get access to premium episodes, like a multi-part series on the life of Audie Murphy, the most decorated combat soldier in World War II, or the 10-part series Ottoman Lives, a series that looks at the cast of characters that made up the Ottoman Empire, such as the Sultan, the eunuch, the harem servant girl, and the soldier. And finally, if you join at the level of Spy Master, you get all the same stuff as the Scouts and Intelligence Officers, but you also get a shout-out to you and or your business at the end of each episode, a 3-pack of hardcover history books, plus you'll be put at the very front of the line for me to answer your question about history, and I can guarantee I will dedicate an episode that's about an hour long or so to your question. Sign up at patreon.com/unplugged. Again, that's patreon.com/unplugged. Unplugged. Anyway, those are the ways you can help out the show. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for listening to the History Unplugged podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get your daily dose of all things history related, from ancient Greece to the Cold War. We'll see you next time at the History Unplugged podcast.